good evening, and welcome. Tonight, we step away from noise, urgency, and rushing clocks. Tonight, we travel gently through time into the calm, disciplined, and deeply thoughtful world of Japanese methodology. This is not a story of battles or empires won by force. It is a story of process, patience, and purpose. A story of how a culture learned to perfect the small things, believing that when the small things are done well, everything else slowly falls into place. So find a comfortable position, let your breathing slow, and as your eyes grow heavy, allow these ideas to drift softly into your thoughts. This is the entire story of Japanese methodology, told gently for sleep, long before charts, systems, or written methods ever existed. The foundations of Japanese methodology were already quietly forming. They were not created in classrooms or offices. They were shaped in villages, fields, forests, and mountains, in places where life moved slowly, and survival depended on understanding rhythm rather than resisting it. Ancient Japan was deeply connected to nature. The people watched the sky for signs of rain. They studied the soil beneath their feet. They learned when to plant, when to wait, and when to harvest. Nothing could be rushed. If seed were planted too early, they failed. If harvested too late, they spoiled. From this simple reality grew an early understanding. Timing matters more than force. This belief slowly shaped how work was approached. Tasks were not judged by how fast they were completed, but by how well they fit into the natural flow of life. Villages worked together rather than alone. Everyone had a role. Everyone depended on the other. When one person rushed or cut corners, the entire community felt the consequences. So care became essential. Attention became survival, and repetition became a teacher. Children learned by watching, not through lectures, but through quiet observation. They copied movements again and again: how to plant rice, how to repair tools, how to prepare food. Mistakes were expected, corrected gently, never shamed. Over time, this created a culture where learning was gradual and mastery was respected. There was no obsession with speed, no pressure for immediate results. Instead, there was trust that consistency would lead to improvement, and improvement would lead to stability. Another powerful idea took root during this time: harmony, or wa. Harmony meant avoiding unnecessary conflict. It meant aligning individual actions with the needs of the group. It meant understanding that success was shared and failure was collective. This way of thinking influenced every task, no matter how small. Work was not something separate from life. It was part of living. The act of sweeping, building, planting, or cooking was treated with the same seriousness as decision-making or leadership. Every action had value. Slowly, quietly, this mindset shaped an early methodology, one that favored balance over ambition and precision over haste. Time was not an enemy. It was an ally. People believed that rushing invited mistakes, and mistakes created waste. So instead of moving faster, they focused on moving better. They refined movements, simplified tools, removed steps that didn't serve a purpose, not because someone ordered them to, but because life demanded it. This early philosophy did not have a name. It did not need one. It lived in habits, in traditions, in the quiet understanding passed from one generation to the next. And those centuries would pass. Though technology would change the world beyond recognition, these roots would remain, waiting patiently beneath the surface, ready to emerge again when the world needed a gentler, wiser way forward. As you listen, allow this slow beginning to settle in your mind. The sound of wind through rice fields, the rhythm of shared labor, the calm certainty that improvement does not come from rushing ahead, but from standing still long enough to understand what truly matters. Take a slow breath and let the story continue, just as gently as it began. As time moved forward, Japan's way of thinking began to deepen. Beyond survival and community, people started to look inward, seeking clarity not just in the world around them, but within the mind itself. This was when Zen Buddhism quietly entered daily life. Zen did not arrive with grand decorations. It arrived softly, through silence, through observation, through stillness. Zen taught that truth could not be forced. It could only be noticed. To see clearly, one had to remove what was unnecessary. This idea would shape not only spiritual practice, but work, craft, and routine. Monks lived lives of structure and simplicity. Their days followed the same rhythm: waking, cleaning, meditating, eating, working. At first glance, it seemed repetitive, but repetition was the point. Each task was done fully, without distraction, without hurry. When a monk swept the temple floor, the goal was not speed. It was awareness. The feel of the broom against a stone, the sound of bristles moving dust, the breath aligning with motion. There was no such thing as a small task. This belief slowly spread beyond the temples. Craftsmen, builders, and artists began to adopt the same mindset. Work became a form of meditation. A potter centered clay on a wheel, focusing only on balance and pressure. A carpenter measured twice, cut once, and reflected before acting. A sword maker folded steel again and again, not just to strengthen the blade, but to remove impurities. Zen taught that perfection was not achieved by adding more, but by removing what did not belong. This led to simplicity in tools, clarity in design, and discipline in process. Mistakes were not emotional. They were informational. When something went wrong, the question was never who failed, but what was misunderstood. Through this lens, discipline was not punishment. It was freedom. By following a clear routine, the mind became calm, focused, present. Japanese methodology absorbed this deeply. Processes were designed to be repeatable, not because creativity was unwanted, but because consistency created space for insight. When the hands know what to do, the mind is free to notice improvement. Zen also taught acceptance of imperfection, the idea that nothing is ever truly finished. A crack in pottery was not hidden. It was honored. This acceptance reduced fear. And where fear faded, learning flourished. Over time, simplicity became a strength. Less waste, less confusion, less resistance, just quiet progress. And so, through Zen, Japanese methodology gained its soul. A belief that work done with presence becomes meaningful, and that meaningful work, done gently and consistently, leads naturally toward mastery. As this chapter settles, imagine a quiet temple courtyard. Morning light, slow movements. A single task performed with care. Nothing rushed, nothing wasted. Let your breathing slow to match that rhythm. And when you are ready, the story will continue, as calmly as a broom moving across stone. As Japanese thought continued to mature, work itself began to take on deeper meaning. It was no longer just a way to survive. It became a way to live with purpose. At the heart of this belief stood a single idea, the mindset of the shokunin. The word shokunin is often translated simply as craftsman or artisan, but its true meaning goes much further. A shokunin is someone who accepts responsibility, not only for the quality of their work, but for the effect that work has on others. This was not about pride or recognition. It was about quiet accountability. To be a shokunin meant doing the right thing, even when no one was watching. A bowl made poorly would inconvenience a family. A beam cut incorrectly could weaken a home. A blade forged carelessly could endanger a life. So every action mattered. Artisans trained for years, sometimes decades, before being considered masters. Apprentices spent long periods observing, cleaning tools, preparing materials, watching hands move slowly and precisely. There was no rushing the process. Skill was not transferred through shortcuts. It was absorbed through repetition. Again and again, the same movements, the same steps. With each repetition, awareness deepened. Mistakes were expected, but excuses were not. When an error occurred, the artisan looked inward. What step was missed? What assumption was wrong? What detail was overlooked? Blame was unnecessary. Reflection was essential. This mindset created trust. People trusted the work of a shokunin because they trusted the character behind it. This trust extended beyond individual craft. Entire trades became known for reliability. lacquerware, textiles, carpentry, metalwork. Consistency became reputation, and reputation became legacy. Japanese methodology absorbed this deeply. Processes were not designed for convenience alone. They were designed to uphold responsibility. Each step existed for a reason. If a step was removed, it was only after careful thought. The Shokunin mindset also embraced patience. Improvement was not rushed. Growth was not forced. There was understanding that mastery unfolds slowly, like wood aging or tea leaves steeping. Even the smallest improvement was respected. A smoother edge, a quieter joint, a more balanced shape. These details mattered because details accumulated, and over time, they became excellence. This approach also shaped teaching. Masters did not overwhelm apprentices with words. They demonstrated. Learning was visual, physical, intuitive. Through this, knowledge became embodied, stored in the hands as much as the mind. And so, the artisan mindset quietly shaped a culture where quality was expected, discipline was natural, and improvement was continuous. As this chapter settles into stillness, imagine a workshop at dawn, soft light through wooden beams, tools laid neatly in place, hands moving with calm confidence. No urgency, no noise, just quiet dedication. Take a slow breath and let that sense of purpose carry you gently into the next chapter of the story. Time moved on, and with it came a period of deep darkness. The modern world arrived suddenly, and with it, war, loss, and destruction. Cities were reduced to silence. Factories stood broken. Resources were scarce. For Japan, the end of war was not only an emotional wound, but a practical one. How do you rebuild when almost everything has been taken away? There was no excess, no room for waste, no tolerance for inefficiency. Every mistake cost more than money. It cost survival. And so, the nation paused. Instead of rushing forward blindly, Japan looked inward. Leaders, engineers, and workers asked careful questions. Why did systems fail before? Where was effort wasted? What truly mattered? This moment of reflection changed everything. Rather than copying foreign methods without thought, Japan studied them carefully. They observed mass production models, but recognized their flaws. Excess inventory, overburdened workers, hidden errors. With limited resources, these weaknesses could not be afforded, so Japan adapted. Factories were reorganized to flow smoothly. Work was broken into clear, purposeful steps. Problems were made visible rather than hidden. Silence became information. If a machine stopped, it was not ignored. It was investigated. If a mistake appeared, work paused, not to punish, but to understand. This was a radical idea at the time. Most systems push problems down the line. Japan brought them to the surface. This approach reduced waste. It reduced fear. It increased learning. Workers were no longer just hands. They were thinkers. Their observations mattered. Their ideas were welcomed. Out of destruction grew clarity. Out of scarcity grew discipline. Old philosophies, patience, responsibility, simplicity, found new expression in modern systems. What had once been instinct became structure. What had once been tradition became methodology. The goal was no longer just production. It was sustainability. Not how fast something could be made, but how reliably it could be made. Again and again. Slowly, factories became places of calm focus, rather than chaotic urgency. Noise was reduced. Movement was purposeful. Every step had meaning. This rebuilding phase did more than restore what was lost. It created something new, a way of working that respected people, valued learning, and treated improvement as a daily responsibility. As this chapter gently fades, imagine a quiet factory floor, machines humming softly, workers moving with intention, problems noticed early and solved calmly. Breathe slowly. From destruction came renewal. From hardship came wisdom. And in the quiet space left behind, a new way forward was born, steady, thoughtful, and patient. As Japan continued its quiet rebuilding, a simple but powerful idea began to guide everything. It was not loud. It was not dramatic. It did not promise instant results. It was called Kaizen. Kaizen means change for the better, but not all at once, not in great leaps. Kaizen believed that improvement should be small, steady, and constant. One tiny step today, another tomorrow, and another the day after that. Over time, these steps create transformation. In a Kaizen mindset, nothing is ever finished. There is always room to improve, and improvement belongs to everyone. In factories and workshops, this idea changed how people worked. Instead of waiting for managers to make decisions, workers were encouraged to speak. If a tool was awkward to use, it could be adjusted. If a step caused confusion, it could be simplified. If a mistake happened often, the process, not the person, was examined. This created something rare, a sense of shared ownership. People cared not just about their task, but about the entire flow of work. Problems were no longer hidden out of fear. They were welcomed as opportunities to learn. Even small improvements were celebrated. A few seconds saved, a movement made easier, a risk removed. These changes seemed insignificant on their own, but together they reshaped entire systems. Kaizen also changed how time was understood. There was no rush to be perfect, only a commitment to be slightly better than yesterday. This removed pressure, and where pressure faded, focus improved. Mistakes became calm moments of reflection. What happened? Why did it happen? How can we prevent it next time? No anger, no blame, just curiosity. Kaizen reached beyond factories. It entered offices, schools, and daily life. People applied it to routines. Cleaning, studying, cooking, organizing. A drawer arranged better. A habit made easier. A schedule adjusted gently. Slow improvement became a way of living. And, perhaps most importantly, Kaizen honored people. It trusted that those closest to the work understood it best. By listening to them, systems grew wiser. As this chapter settles into quiet, imagine a single step forward, small, almost invisible, yet repeated day after day. Breathe slowly. Kaizen reminds us that change does not need force, only attention, and with patience, the smallest improvements can carry us very far. As Japanese methodology continued to evolve, another idea quietly took shape, an idea often misunderstood. It was called standardization. To some, the word sounds rigid, restrictive, cold, but in Japan, standardization was never about control. It was about clarity. When a process is clear, work becomes calm. When everyone understands a best-known way to do something, confusion fades. Standards were not rules carved in stone. They were living guides, descriptions of the current best practice. If a better way was discovered, the standard was expected to change. This removed fear. People were not punished for improving a process. They were encouraged. Standardization created a shared language. Anyone could look at a task and understand what comes first, what comes next, and why. This made training gentle. New workers learned faster. Mistakes were reduced, not because people became more careful, but because systems became clearer. Standardization also revealed problems. When everyone follows the same process, variations stand out. If something went wrong, it could be traced easily, not to assign blame, but to find understanding. This allowed improvement to happen quickly and calmly. Japanese methodology treated standards with respect. Following a process was seen as an act of professionalism. It meant honoring the experience of those who came before while remaining open to improvement. This balance between discipline and flexibility was essential. Too much freedom created chaos. Too much rigidity created stagnation. Standardization found the quiet middle. It allowed creativity to focus on improvement rather than reinvention. People no longer wasted energy deciding how to do basic tasks. That energy was saved for thinking, noticing, refining. Over time, this created stability. Work became predictable. Quality became reliable. Trust grew naturally. This respect for process extended into daily life. Households developed routines. Schools followed thoughtful structures. Even simple actions were done with intention, not because someone demanded it, but because it brought peace. As this chapter gently settles, imagine a clear path through a garden, stones placed carefully, each step known, each movement easy, no confusion, no hurry, just a quiet flow forward. Take a slow breath. Standardization, when guided by respect, does not limit us. It frees us to improve, to learn, and to move calmly through our work and our lives. As the years passed, something quiet but remarkable began to happen. The world started to notice Japan, not because of loud declarations or aggressive expansion, but because of consistency. Products lasted longer. Machines failed less often. Quality felt dependable. Across oceans and borders, engineers, managers, and thinkers grew curious. They visited Japanese factories. They watched carefully. What they saw surprised them. There was no frantic urgency, no shouting supervisors, no chaos. Instead, there was calm. Workspaces were clean. Tools had their places. Movement followed clear, thoughtful paths. Problems were discussed openly. Improvements were shared. This was different. Many countries tried to copy what they saw. They imported diagrams, adopted new terminology, installed new systems. But something was often missing, because Japanese methodology was never just about tools. It was about mindset. Some organizations focused only on speed. They wanted quick results. But Japanese methodology required patience. It required respect for people, for their knowledge, their experience, their ability to think. Without that respect, the methods felt empty. Still, the influence spread. Kaizen found its way into global business. Standardization improved safety and quality. Process thinking reduced waste. Industries changed. Manufacturing, healthcare, education, even software development. Wherever these ideas were applied with care, results followed, but where they were rushed, they failed quietly. This taught an important lesson. Japanese methodology could not be forced. It had to be grown. It thrived in environments where learning was valued, where mistakes were treated gently, where improvement was shared. Over time, a deeper understanding emerged. The real export was not a system. It was a philosophy, one that believed calm thinking outperforms urgency, that small improvements matter, that people are the source of quality. As this chapter settles into stillness, imagine ideas drifting across oceans, softly, patiently, finding places where they can take root. Take a slow breath. The world did not change overnight, but quietly, steadily, Japanese methodology began reshaping how people everywhere thought about work, about improvement, and about progress itself. As our journey nears its end, the story of Japanese methodology does not conclude with a final moment. It continues quietly. There is no single monument that marks its success, no dramatic ending, because this methodology was never meant to finish. It lives in daily habits, in small decisions, in moments most people overlook. Today, its influence can be felt far beyond factories or offices, in the way a workspace is arranged with care, in the way a task is broken into thoughtful steps, in the way mistakes are met with curiosity instead of anger. Japanese methodology reminds us that excellence does not come from pressure. It comes from attention, from slowing down enough to notice what truly matters. In a world that often demands speed, this philosophy offers something different. It invites patience. It teaches that improvement does not need to be dramatic to be meaningful, that progress does not need to be loud to be real. One small adjustment, one thoughtful pause, one better way discovered gently. Over time, these moments accumulate. They shape culture. They shape character. They shape lives. The legacy of Japanese methodology is not control, but respect. Respect for people. Respect for process. Respect for time. It trusts that when people are given clarity and care, They naturally seek improvement. And when improvement becomes a habit, excellence follows quietly behind as the story fades into rest. Imagine the soft rhythm of steady progress, not rushing, not forcing, just moving forward, calmly, patiently, with intention. Let your breathing slow. Allow your thoughts to settle like dust in still air. There is nothing left to fix tonight, nothing left to improve. For now, it is enough to rest. And as sleep gently finds you, remember this simple truth. The most lasting changes in the world are often the quietest ones. Good night.